Liberal talk show host tries to humiliate Barron Trump. His epic clapback goes viral. In the bustling city of New York, the sun was setting on another day in the life of Richard Marston, a prominent liberal talk show host known for his sharp wit and controversial commentary. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Marston had become a household name, often making waves with his bold opinions and relentless pursuit of what he believed to be social justice. Marston's show, The Truth, Unveiled, aired every weekday evening, attracting millions of viewers eager for their daily dose of political discourse and fiery debate. His studio, located in the heart of Manhattan, was a hub of activity, filled with bright lights, cameras, and a team of dedicated producers and writers. The atmosphere was always charged with energy as Marston prepared for his next segment, knowing that his words would be dissected by audiences across the nation. Tonight, however, Marston had a special guest lined up. A young man who had become a lightning rod for public opinion despite his youth, Barron Trump. The son of President Donald Trump, Barron had largely stayed out of the limelight since his father's presidency ended, but Marston saw him as the perfect target for his latest episode. Marston believed that by targeting Barron, he could strike at the heart of the Trump family and, by extension, their political legacy. As Marston reviewed his notes and prepared his opening monologue, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. He knew that this segment could make or break his reputation, but he was confident in his ability to dominate the conversation. The stage was set for an explosive confrontation, one that would soon become a viral sensation and change the course of both their lives forever. The studio lights flickered on, signaling the start of Richard Marston's show. The audience, a mix of supporters and critics, settled into their seats, their anticipation palpable. On cue, Marston walked onto the stage, his presence commanding and confident. The camera panned to the empty chair opposite him, where Barron Trump was scheduled to sit. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Marston began, his voice resonating through the room. "Tonight, we have a very special guest joining us, a young man who has been thrust into the spotlight by circumstances beyond his control. I'm talking about Barron Trump." The camera cut to a shot of Barron, standing at the entrance of the studio, looking composed yet slightly apprehensive. His youthful face contrasted sharply with the intensity of the moment. As he made his way to his seat, Marston continued, "Now, Barron, you've largely kept a low profile since your father left office. But tonight, we're going to delve into some of the controversies surrounding your family." Barron sat down, his demeanor calm and collected. He fixed his gaze on Marston, ready for whatever was coming next. Marston leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he prepared to launch his attack. "The Trumps have always been a family that thrives on controversy," Marston began, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "From the allegations of fraud to the countless scandals, it seems like you can't turn around without hearing something new about them. So, Barron, how does it feel to be part of such a contentious family?" The question hung in the air, the weight of it palpable. Barron took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew Marston was trying to provoke him, but he also knew that he had to remain composed. "I don't think being part of any family should be defined by controversy," Barron replied steadily. "My family has faced its share of challenges, but that doesn't mean my personal life should be dragged into the mud." Marston smirked, clearly not expecting such a composed response. "Well, Barron, let's talk about your father's presidency then. There were numerous allegations of misconduct during his time in office. How do you reconcile those with the image you want to present to the world?" Barron's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "My father served as president, and while there were certainly disagreements, he did what he believed was best for the country. It's important to remember that everyone is entitled to their own perspective." Marston chuckled, shaking his head. Aren't you worried that by defending him, you might be seen as perpetuating the same issues? I defend my father because he is. My father and I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt, Barron responded firmly. But more importantly, I stand here today to speak for myself and my own values. The exchange had begun on a tense note, but Barron's measured responses were starting to throw Marston off balance. The audience, sensing the tension, grew quieter, their attention riveted on the unfolding drama. Richard Marston leaned back in his chair, his confidence visibly waning. Barron Trump's composed demeanor and articulate responses were throwing him off his game. Determined to regain control, Marston decided to shift tactics, zeroing in on Barron's personal life. "Let's talk about something a bit more personal, shall we?" Marston said, his tone taking on a more insidious edge. "Your sister Tiffany recently made headlines after she spoke out against your father. Did you know about her feelings before they became public, or was it a shock to you?" Barron's expression remained neutral, but a flicker of discomfort passed through his eyes. "Tiffany is my sister, and like any sibling, we have our differences," he replied evenly. "But I respect her right to express her views, just as I expect others to respect mine." Marston pressed on, undeterred. "And what about your mother, Melania? Has she ever spoken to you about the criticisms levied against your father? Has she ever expressed regret for being part of such a controversial family?" Barron's jaw clenched, and for a brief moment it seemed as though he might lose his composure. But he quickly regained his footing. "My mother has never expressed regret to me, nor do I believe she should have to justify her decisions to anyone," Barron replied, his voice steady. "She has her own beliefs and principles, just like any other parent." Marston's brow furrowed, his plan to unsettle Barron seemingly failing. He decided to try a different approach, aiming to provoke a stronger reaction. "So Barron, tell me, how does it feel to be the son of someone so divisive, someone who has caused so much division in this country?" The question hung in the air, the silence stretching out as Barron weighed his response. He knew that Marston was trying to get under his skin, but he refused to let him succeed. Taking a deep breath, Barron looked directly into the camera, his voice unwavering. "Being the son of someone controversial is not easy, but it's a reality I have to live with," he began. "However, I choose to focus on the positive aspects of my upbringing. My parents instilled in me values of hard work, integrity, and resilience. And while I acknowledge the controversies surrounding my family, I refuse to let them define me. I am my own person, with my own beliefs and aspirations." Marston's eyes narrowed, clearly frustrated by Barron's poise. He attempted one last, desperate attempt to unnerve his young opponent. "But Barron, don't you see? By defending your father and your family, you're essentially endorsing everything they've stood for, including all the negative aspects." Barron's expression softened, but his resolve remained firm. "Defending my family doesn't mean endorsing everything they've done. It means standing by them in difficult times, just as they stood by me when I needed them. I may not agree with every decision my family has made, but I support them because they are my family." The tension in the room was almost tangible as the audience watched the unfolding confrontation. They could sense that Marston was losing ground, and Barron's measured responses were gaining him unexpected sympathy. The turning point had arrived, and it was clear that Barron was not going to be easily swayed. Richard Marston leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Barron Trump with an intensity that bordered on aggression. He was determined to bring Barron down a peg and expose him as nothing more than a puppet for his father's legacy. With a sneer, Marston launched into his final salvo. "All right, Barron, let's get real," Marston began, his voice dripping with condescension. "You've been living in the shadow of your father's name for far too long. Don't you think it's time you step out from behind his oversized shadow and forge your own path?" Barron's expression remained calm, but a glint of steel shone in his eyes. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the ultimate showdown. "I appreciate the sentiment, Richard, but the idea that I'm hiding behind my father's name is simply not true. I've built my own path, one that's based on my own values and experiences. Just because my father was in the public eye doesn't mean I haven't carved out my own identity." Marston scoffed, clearly dismissive. "Oh, really? Then why do you still carry the Trump name? Why haven't you distanced yourself from your father's actions? It's not like the controversies surrounding him have gone away." Barron's voice remained steady, but a hint of defiance crept into his tone. "The Trump name is part of my identity, whether I like it or not. But carrying that name doesn't mean I condone every action my father took. It means I understand the complexities of being part of a family that has been in the spotlight. I have my own beliefs and principles, and I stand by them regardless of who I am related to." Marston's frustration was palpable as he tried to rattle Barron once more. "So you're saying you're proud of your father's legacy? That you're okay with everything he's done?" Barron paused, allowing the weight of the question to settle. Then, in a voice that resonated with conviction, he delivered his epic clapback. "No, Richard, I'm not proud of every single thing my father has done. But I am proud of who I am, and I am proud of the values my parents taught me. I stand here as my own person, not defined solely by my family's past. I've worked hard to build my own life, and I won't let anyone take that away from me." The audience fell silent, stunned by the strength and clarity of Barron's response. Marston's smirk faded, replaced by a look of genuine surprise. He had expected Barron to crumble under pressure, but instead he found himself facing a formidable opponent. Barron's words hung in the air, their impact undeniable. For the first time in years, someone had stood up to Richard Marston and managed to hold their ground. The young man's composure and eloquence had not only deflated Marston's attempts to humiliate him, but had also earned him a newfound respect from the audience. As the show drew to a close, Marston's initial confidence had been shattered, leaving him scrambling to salvage his reputation. Barron Trump, on the other hand, had emerged victorious, his powerful rebuttal ensuring that his voice would be heard loud and clear. The show ended with a dramatic flourish, the camera cutting to a close-up of Barron Trump's resolute face. The audience erupted into applause, a mixture of admiration and support for the young man who had held his own against one of the most formidable hosts on television. The tension in the room dissipated as people exchanged glances, many nodding in approval of Barron's performance. Backstage, Barron was greeted by a flurry of reporters and photographers, clamoring for comments. Despite the chaos, he remained composed, his posture relaxed, yet dignified. "I came here tonight to share my perspective and stand up for what I believe in," he told the gathered media. "I hope that my words will encourage others to find their own voices and stand strong in the face of adversity." Richard Marston, meanwhile, retreated to his dressing room, his demeanor somber. His producers and writers hovered around him, discussing strategies to mitigate the damage. "We need to spin this positively," one of them suggested. "Emphasize how Barron's responses were deflective and avoid addressing the core issues." Marston nodded absent-mindedly, his mind still reeling from the unexpected turn of events. "We underestimated him," he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. "We thought he'd be easy prey, but he proved us wrong. We need to be more careful in the future." The following morning, the aftermath of the show dominated headlines across the nation. Social media platforms buzzed with reactions, ranging from praise for Barron's poise to criticism of Marston's aggressive tactics. Barron Trump Clapback trended worldwide, with users sharing clips of the most impactful moments from the interview. News outlets picked up the story, analyzing the implications of the confrontation. Some commentators praised Barron for his maturity and eloquence, While others criticized Marston for his heavy-handed approach, the general consensus seemed to be that Barron had emerged as the clear winner, having not only defended himself but also gained a significant amount of respect in the process. The viral nature of Barron's Clapback quickly extended beyond the confines of television and social media. In schools, offices, and homes across the country, people discussed the interview, using it as a talking point for broader conversations about family dynamics, public perception, and the power of standing up for oneself. Teachers used the clip in classrooms to illustrate effective communication and resilience, while parents shared it with their children as an example of how to handle difficult situations gracefully. For Barron, the overnight fame brought both opportunities and challenges. Invitations to speaking engagements poured in, and he found himself fielding requests for interviews from various media outlets. He cautiously navigated these opportunities, choosing to use his platform to advocate for causes he believed in rather than seeking further publicity. His measured responses and thoughtful insights garnered him a loyal following, particularly among younger audiences who admired his courage and intelligence. Richard Marston faced intense scrutiny from colleagues and the public, accused of crossing ethical boundaries. His ratings plummeted as viewers turned away, disgusted by his approach. Though he tried shifting to less controversial topics, the damage was done. He realized his aggressive style had alienated many, forcing him to reconsider his approach and priorities. Meanwhile, Barron took a different path. The experience had changed him, making him reflect on his values and ambitions. Rather than retreating, he decided to use his newfound visibility for good. He founded Empower Voices, a non-profit dedicated to helping young people develop confidence, critical thinking, and communication skills. The organization quickly gained traction, offering workshops and mentorship programs designed to help individuals express themselves and stand up for their beliefs. Barron traveled extensively, speaking at events, engaging with communities, and spreading the message of resilience and self-determination. Schools and universities began incorporating lessons from the interview, using it as a case study on grace under pressure. Teachers noticed increased engagement from students who previously hesitated to speak up, inspired by Barron's example. For Marston, the fallout was a wake-up call. He realized he had allowed sensationalism to overshadow meaningful dialogue. Determined to redeem himself, he shifted his show's focus, incorporating more balanced perspectives and fostering genuine conversations rather than spectacle. While his ratings never fully recovered, he found a renewed sense of purpose in promoting understanding and unity rather than division. Years later, both men looked back on the interview as a defining moment. For Barron, it was the spark that set him on a path of purpose and leadership. For Marston, it was a lesson in the responsibility that comes with having a platform. What was meant to humiliate Barron had instead empowered him, inspiring a generation to stand tall in the face of adversity. Empower Voices grew rapidly, partnering with universities, community centers, and international organizations to expand its impact. One of its most successful initiatives was a series of virtual town halls where young leaders shared their stories, fostering global conversations about resilience, leadership, and self-expression. Scholarships and mentorship programs helped young people from diverse backgrounds gain access to opportunities that once seemed out of reach. Marston, too, transformed. He began highlighting stories of social change and individual triumphs, shifting his narrative from divisive politics to constructive solutions. While he remained a polarizing figure, his willingness to admit mistakes and evolve resonated with many. His show slowly regained credibility, not because he became less outspoken, but because he became more thoughtful and balanced. A defining moment in his redemption arc came when he invited Barron back onto his show for a follow-up interview. This time, the atmosphere was markedly different. Instead of hostility, there was mutual respect and a shared desire to engage in meaningful dialogue. "Barron, I want to start by saying your performance that night was truly impressive," Marston admitted. "It taught me a lot about the importance of dignity and respect in public discourse. I think we both learned valuable lessons that night." Barron smiled, appreciating the sincerity. "Thank you, Richard. I believe open and honest dialogue is crucial, even when we disagree. Growth comes from reflection and learning from each other." Their conversation explored broader themes of family, public perception, and the role of young people in shaping the future. By the end of the interview, both men agreed to collaborate on initiatives aimed at fostering productive discourse and positive change. The impact of Barron's response extended far beyond the initial confrontation. Inspired by his example, social media platforms introduced stricter guidelines on hate speech and harassment, acknowledging the dangers of inflammatory rhetoric. Public figures became more mindful of their influence, shifting toward more responsible and substantive discussions. Barron's influence continued to grow on a global scale. Empower Voices expanded internationally, forming partnerships in Europe, Asia, and Africa. His work in youth empowerment earned him numerous accolades, including a prestigious humanitarian award for his contributions to leadership and civic engagement. What started as an attempt to discredit Barron had backfired spectacularly. Instead of breaking him, it propelled him forward, inspiring millions to stand firm in their beliefs with confidence and dignity. His response became a defining moment in modern discourse, proving that true strength isn't found in aggression or outrage, but in the quiet power of resilience, intelligence, and integrity.